I am very happy to welcome Professor Daniel Pauly, who is a professor of fisheries at the University of British Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us. And yes, feel free to share your screen.
My name is Daniel Pauly, and I'm a professor of fisheries and marine biology at the University of British Columbia in Canada, in Vancouver. I'm actually born in Paris, but I grew up in Switzerland and studied in Germany. And I worked a long time in Asia, in Indonesia, and especially in the Philippines. And now I'm working on the fisheries in the south and all global fisheries with emphasis on those in the global south. And one can take any of them as an example, but given that I'm in France now, I have chosen to illustrate the issues at hand, the fisheries of Senegal, because I know them well, that's one thing, but also because they are the ones that affect very strongly the relationship between France and the EU and West Africa. And this presentation has two parts. The first part is showing the evidence that indeed the fishery resource of Senegal have been depleted, mainly by foreign fleets, including those from the EU. The other part, which is more difficult, is the reception of this, or the interpretation of this crisis in the media in France and the West in general, the Western press. But if I have a little problem, which is making this thing move into the next slide. I did mention that I work on the global south, on fisheries in the global south, and specifically for this presentation here and this work here, I decided to work on Senegal because the case is very acute and it has implication, political and human and ethical consideration for the EU specifically. And we start with characterizing Senegal. Senegal has a long tradition of fishing because, notably because it was on an upwelling system, a system that brings rich water, cold water from the depth. This is one of the 4 largest current of this type in the world. This long fishing tradition has led to the emergence of a group, an ethnic group, linguistic group, the Lebu, who are characterized, who specialize in fishing along the coast of Senegal. And they go all the way north to Senegal, to Mauritania, and south to Guinea-Bissau and beyond. Now, in the 70s and 80s, there was in Senegal and in West Africa in general, a massive series of droughts, which brought pastoralist people, they're tall and thin, to the coast, where, because they had to abandon them. And throughout the world, this is a phenomenon that dispossessed farmers or landless farmers, or people, in this case, pastoralists who experience drought and so on, they try to join to connect in cities to get work, but they also join fisheries. And about half of the fishers, artisanal fishers now in the world, are not traditional fishers. They are people who've been driven to the coast because of the lack of property rights on fisheries resource. They could integrate themselves in fishing, which they couldn't do in agriculture. But at the time, they were the fisheries Senegalese fisheries were in full swing and generated abundant catches, so they could be integrated. The 70s and 80s also saw two important developments impacting the fisheries. One is in the exclusive economic zone of Senegal, there were increasing number of distant water fleets. That is, fleet that don't return to the home port but operate far away from their home port and land they catch wherever. First from Spain, then the ex-Soviet Union, Ukraine, and Russia, and more recently China. Lots of other countries, but the main players are Spain, the Soviet Union, and Russia, especially, and more recently China. They showed up in a few seconds. The second aspect of Senegalese fisheries is that the research about Senegalese fisheries was done almost exclusively by French scientists from OSTOM and IRD. OSTOM is Organisation de Recherche Scientifique for the foreign countries, was founded during the Vichy Republic. This gives you a touch of an indication of the attitudes that prevailed at the time. IRD is the modern incarnation of OSTOM, but it was largely a neo-colonial enterprise, whose staff never saw it as necessary to train local scientists that would eventually replace them. They replace simply the infrastructure that Senegal should have built to assess its own fisheries. The IRD and people, many of them were personal friends, actually established a very good local system recording system for local catches, and that makes Senegal the country in West Africa that has the very good statistics, but only for local fisheries. And the impact of foreign fishing could not be assessed because they are reported, the foreign fisheries, when they report they catch, reported to FAO by giant areas which don't include the EZ, which don't specify the EZ of industrial fisheries, which had a tremendous impact on the small-scale fisheries of the country. Just a little reminder: this is the economic exclusive economic zone of Senegal, and it covers 150,000 square kilometers and includes an area of shelf, approximately the red zone, that goes to 200-meter depth and is the most accessible and productive for the small-scale fishers. The dark band in the middle is the EZ of Gambia, which I won't mention in this context. So this graph, and I don't have many, is really important because it shows several big problems. One of them is that the actual catch is in Senegal, in freshwater, in the EZ, is much bigger than reported catch. The black line is reported catch. It's reported by the Senegalese authority to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and while it shows a decline since the 2000, it is actually not the decline that Senegal experienced. You can see the decline in dark blue from 2000 or 1950 to the present, to the near present, is quite steep, and is actually experienced as steeper because Senegal reports as its own catch catches that are made in Mauritania and in Guinea-Bissau. Now, what is stunning or important in this graph is the catch by other people. And the orange stuff is the catch of Spain, the catch that is reported from larger area and localize it, put it in the EZ of Irish countries, because you need evidence for this. And so we are presently updating it and to 2022, 23, and that what we should add at the end is a huge Chinese catch. This is not updated. Yeah. So the difference here is the official catch, the one that people work with, and the actual catch that is much bigger. And this big catch is taken from a limited area, and it causes increasingly problem. And the coexistence of industrial fishing is a powerful way of removing fish from the sea, while artisanal fishing, also commercial, but is a smaller operation and based on canoes. They can coexist. They can coexist, but essentially the industrial fishing must be limited and assigned to offshore areas and not inshore where the small-scale fishers operate. Also, they must have catch limits that must be evaluated by a process called stock assessment. And they can coexist, and we see that in countries that have reasonable fisheries management. Until recently, that was the US, by the way, and it's now being demolished. This was one of the countries with the best fisheries management. And the industrial fishing, the distant water fleet from other countries, is regulated since '83, since the Convention of the Law of the Sea, by so-called access agreements. They are negotiated for the open countries by the EU. In our specific case, Spain is represented by the EU in negotiation. Russia also had access agreement, but mostly they fish illegally in Senegal from a base in Mauritania. And China now is a major force in the fishing world, and in Senegal specifically, but the access agreements are completely opaque. We don't know how much they are supposed to fish, if there is any limit, what kind of boat they can have, which is usually specified in access agreement, what kind of boats, how many days, how many tons they can fish, and so on. This is all opaque, and you can ask yourself, how come this access agreement, which generally pay about 4 to 5% of ex-vessel price, it is of the first sales price of the fish, which is not where the money is. The money is made at the retail level, obviously. How come these agreements are so bad for the country concerned? And this obviously has to do with a very unequal power position of the partners. They result, this negotiation, in what China, for historical reasons, called unequal treaties. Basically, you have a country like Senegal that whose major export is peanuts, if I'm not mistaken. At least it was in the 80s, and then I guess in negotiation with Spain or with the EU representing Spain, they have only to ask, how many of your peanuts do you want to export to us? And then I guess Senegal has to say, many, and that means they have to allow Spanish vessels to come and do whatever they want. And these unequal treaties are really unequal. They are the basis for much injustice, and I will get back to this in a minute. Now, there have been 4 decades of that, and the Senegalese EZ has been essentially emptied of fish, and the industrial boats have been involved in overt competition with local artisanal fisheries. That was described by anthropologists, by sociologists, much more than fishery scientists. Fishery scientists, at least some of them or most of them, do not care much about it. They care about tonnage, and that what could be predicted has happened, which is that the fisheries resources have collapsed. Sustainable fisheries obviously are possible, but you have to limit the potential, limit the fishing effort so that the biomass, the amount of fish in the water remains relatively high so that you can fish and make profit, and you don't have to subsidize the fleet and water fleet requiring immense quantities of subsidies, including the subsidization through slavery on board. In the Pacific Ocean alone, there are about 100,000 slaves, actual victim of modern slavery on vessel, people who have never seen land in 10 years. So we have a generalist collapse of fisheries resources in Senegal, but specifically, we have that also in Europe, by the way. But in Europe, this is completely masked by imports and by subsidization of the fishery. We have an enormous level of subsidization so that the fishery continues to operate. They fish for subsidies, and about 80% of the fish they consume in Europe is imported from elsewhere. This is also the case for Japan, the US, and that's the reason why we don't notice the fact that the fisheries in France and in the UK and everywhere have collapsed already. The maximum catch was obtained in the North Atlantic in 1975. But the real problem is that this generalized collapse of fisheries resource includes the cheap small-scale fish that Senegalese have had as last resource in terms of protein. And both on the coast and especially in the protein-deficient interior of the country, dried fish or sardinella, like small sardine, are not available. And they are not available because of the recent development of grinding them up for fish meal. And that is exported to China and the world market, where they end up in salmon and other prized fish that go into the markets of rich countries. Now that is a big problem because we are talking about a country that was at the edge of being food deficient, and now one of its major protein producer and protein source and micronutrient source is being ground up. And it is so bad that the market woman that produced this, dried the fish and packed it and sent it to the interior are now involved in all kind of are competing with the artisanal fishers for the fish. And this competition involves sex. It involves all kind of shady things, because actually the fish meal factory offer better prices myself, I have worked for many years about Senegal, other countries as well. I told you I work mainly on the fisheries of Global South. I have run a big conference with colleagues about the resource of Senegal. I have seen the Senegalese government pretend that the whales were the problems. It ate all the fish, so they could vote in a corrupt way with the Japanese who wanted whaling. And I have worked on the Sardinella stocks and seen Senegalese colleagues and Mauritanian colleagues and colleagues from other countries not working together, even though they should, and not working together even for stocks that are migratory, that require working together. And I have run various conflicts with French colleagues, especially from IRD, because of this reconstruction business, because I question the statistics that they have established. I mentioned a very good system, which, however, doesn't capture all. So this is the first part of my work, and there is no problem with documenting the problem in a way that will connect with non-specialists and non-fisheries people. The second issue and is to analyze how the press and the French press and the Western press cover the migration of artisanal fishers that result from this. You will have seen in the newspaper that hundreds and thousands of people in the meantime drown, the children of fishers, and don't see a future for themselves. The Senegalese government is trying to keep them home, but the Senegalese government has very little resource to offer them. And I have read 100 articles or so in the meantime, and very few of them connect the fact that the fisheries have been destroyed and the resource of people have been destroyed by European vessels and aided by Russian and with the assistance of the Chinese recently. They very often say that it is all the Chinese, but the Chinese have been doing that only for 3-4 years. The bulk of the damage was done in the 80s, 90s. And I must say, I know several ways I could present this, the fleet, but the damage that was done, I could present it. But this is actually dealing with an ethical issue, in addition to documenting the facts at hand. This is an ethical issue, and as you will have noticed, I'm not deep in the humanities, and I will certainly appreciate suggestion on how to deal with essentially what is a deeply ethical issue that needs to be presented in a profoundly unethical context, a context in which it's perfectly legitimate to screw people who are available for being screwed. That is the basis of the unethical, or rather unequal treaties, right? When China was very weak, China was sack Beijing and get away with it. And now we have a similar situation, but the press happily reports about all these people who come and to West Africa, from West Africa, but doesn't mention at all that we in the West, and specifically the EU, has encouraged and paid for Spain to destroy the resource there and other countries. So I do not know how to weave in an ethical dimension into this horror trip. So that's my challenge, would be my challenge in the next 4 weeks. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Yes, I see.
I stop sharing.
Yes. Great. So yes, thank you. And we will go with Sadi first.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for this fascinating but very sad description. I think this is very similar in a way to the problem that Ulrike has described. I mean, this is a problem of externalities, and how do we manage in a way to do repair, right? And how do we do these kind of negotiations when there is a very unequal power struggle? And I think Adam is tackling with this other aspect, and maybe you would be interested also to discuss here with Tine de Stooper, who's working on restorative justice and transitional justice. The question here is in a way that first you have the problem in all these question of the stock and the flux, right? So first you have to stop the continuation of the drain. That's the first thing, stop the flux, and then you have to deal with all the accumulated damage on the stock, right? And that's, I think these two problems should be dealt with separately, like in many cases. So you first have to address, I mean, with regulation to make things not continue, and this is a power struggle, I'm afraid. And then you have to see how to restore the flux, and that's an ecological problem, and the problem.
Well,
yeah.
If I may say that the restoring is actually, nature is very forgiving. If we reduce the pressure on the resource, it will bounce back. You don't have to replant trees and stuff. It will bounce back, and that the experience that is done worldwide with marine protected areas and with fisheries management shows that it will bounce back. Now, we're not talking about global warming. That is an issue that will make bouncing back a bit difficult, but it would. But the negotiating power or lack thereof is a major problem. If you look at a country, let's assume a country, not necessarily Senegal, but that has a good government, not corrupt, not good intention. And what is it? What is this government in West Africa, for example, going to fund the hospital, the schools, the roads, the things that the government must do? What is it going to be funded with? Taxes? The people are poor, so they cannot tax people who are miserable. I mean, the Portuguese have done that in the colony, head taxes. This is slavery. That doesn't work. You tax the corporation that operate the few. You cannot, because that they came only because they were promised to not pay taxes. So what do these governments do? They give mining rights, forestry, and fisheries to these countries that are giving them a little bit of money. So basically, they inherently have no power. That because they have nothing. No, they don't have fallback position where they can say, screw you, we don't want you. They don't. And add to this the fact that West Africa in particular has been unable to unite against foreign fishing, as opposed to the South Pacific countries, the small island countries or small island states. They have been able to form a coalition that says you can fish tuna only if you follow the following rules and if you pay that much. In West Africa, it has been impossible to do. I don't know, for cultural reason, I don't know if for political reason, or if enough people have been bribed to prevent that from happening. But it is very very strong, the difference between the Pacific island states, which are also very, very small and very weak, perhaps even more so, but they have come together. In West Africa, it's not. Yep.
Thank you. Gordon, next.
Okay, thank you for an excellent talk. I hope you can hear me okay.
I can.
Yes, and so effectively the question of, you know, who's responsible could be used. You could use blame theory in order to explore that in terms of responsibility, but you seem to be placing the blame entirely or largely on Spain. And then
No, the EU say.
well,
The
okay,
EU.
so the EU, but I mean, having negotiated in, you know, within the United Nations as part of the 12 on actually drift net fishing, it's true that we actually looked to the Spanish, and the Spanish always took the lead on fishing, but then we were all complicit in that because once the lead had been taken, we all went along with it, and the Commission was, of course, in charge of trade negotiations. So you've got them to blame, and there's a pecking order of responsibility. But then, as you've kind of hinted, there's also the Senegalese government, because as part of the Lomé Convention and the Cotonou Accords and the Economic Partnership Agreements, there will be other deals and other benefits that Senegal will get, which will lead them to stay silent on this. So in terms of unpicking who's responsible, there's a lot of potential, you know, it could become a bit of a whodunit there as well. And then the reporting by the press, of course, is another factor. And then the relative, because Senegal is actually a country which is relatively robust by West African standards as well. So that's kind of a comment. And the other kind of comment stroke question is, I wondered whether this is all part of the whole issue of African sovereignty, and how, because Jackson always talks about, in order to be a sovereign state, you need to be able to run your own economy and defend your own frontiers. But here, this is talking about defending your economic zone outside those frontiers, and they don't seem to be able to do that, and they don't seem to be able to do it either militarily or through at the negotiating table. So is this a problem of lack of negotiating capacity, which reflects a sovereignty problem, or is this, you know, the Senegalese have just been, as you put it, screwed over, and this is a historical thing? Because it looks to me as though this could perpetuate over time as well. This is not something, this hasn't been resolved, you know, this isn't, so it's more of a kind of comment stroke question.
You're perfectly right, but that there is some responsibility for the Senegalese government. And therefore, I said, if they were an ideal government with good intention, it would have serious problem because it doesn't have a reasonable tax base. And also, I didn't mention China. Perhaps I should mention. I don't think that Japan is also a fishing power, but mainly tuna. Japan doesn't mind being against the whole world. You know, we saw that in the whaling position. You know, screw you, and that's it. And then Japan does its thing. China, which has global ambition, but wants to be wanted, wants to be in agreement, leading with the world. And I experienced that very much. One time I reported on the Chinese fishery distant water fleet, and I was mentioning that it basically does the same horror that the Spaniards and others doing, but much bigger. It's like it does the same thing, but much bigger. And I suggested to the European Parliament, represented mainly by lobbyists for the industry, I should say, that the only way they can work, we can influence China, is to give a good example, to do the right thing. And that's the reason why I mentioned Europe as a blame receiver, or because if Europe established better rule, then it is likely the Chinese would follow. I'm not saying they will, but it is likely they will follow. And I was very surprised when at the end of my discussion with his lobbyists from the parliament, from the European Parliament, somebody from the Commission, a lady, very coolly said that China does adhere to treaties and agreements, but we have to negotiate them in good faith. And blaming China for everything that happens in West Africa, for example, is not good faith, because it's not them who have destroyed the resource. I mean, it has been a long process that enabled China to come in, because their cost is even lower and its subsidization is even higher. So they can make money where the others cannot make money anymore. And that is a horrible situation. You can blame then China, because but actually the period of where Senegal was doing very well, in that period, it was the Spanish that were running the show. And so I think giving a good example is the way to solve this problem. And I don't see the European Union giving a good example. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Lucia?
Thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned access agreements and also subsidies. And then I was wondering how Chinese, Russian, or European fishing groups invest in Senegal. Do they invest directly, or do they operate through capital markets, such as investment funds and other financial instruments, as is often the case in sectors like mining? So I would be interested in hearing more about the financial infrastructures that support fisheries.
Yeah. The fishing doesn't involve investment in a country from which you fish, where you operate. You can send your vessel, they fish, and you bring the fish back out where it is shipped to. It is transported to a reef boat, to reefers, so vessels that just transport the fish back home. So you have actually no interaction except for the agreement. If you don't fish illegally, no interaction with the local governments. So it doesn't correspond to investment in mining, because you don't use local people. You don't. There are agreements where you're supposed to involve a certain percentage of your crew on the boats, but you can have no such thing. There is when a Russian, for example, fish illegally in Senegal, they do that. They do that without other contact with Senegal. And the same thing with China. The Chinese vessel dumps some of the unmarketable fish, dump it on Chinese market. They call it Africa fish. And the bulk of it is brought either to international market, in Tenerife or other Western market, or they bring back to China. So there is no investment involved, and no investment that are visible in the country. If that's what you meant.
No, sorry, but I meant the groups. For instance, they are companies that are publicly held, or they have, who are the investors of these companies. So maybe could map some common actors that are leading with this economic activity around the world.
So many of the beneficial owners of this fleet are actually not known. It is even Chinese vessels are often in Cayman Island or something, it's very difficult to find the beneficial owners. Many of them have flag of convenience, Panama or Belize, and we say it's a Chinese or it's a Taiwanese or it's unclear who owns the damn thing. And some of the Chinese firms are the Chinese army, for example. But you can find that out only to specialized journalists that dig into these financial reports. Basically, there is, because many of these firms are semi-criminal enterprise. Many fleets that are offshore, that stay offshore and don't ever land in the countries where they operate, they employ slaves, and they are not going to let you know that this investment is from this investment firm. For example, the French fisheries are now largely and controlled by a Dutch group, a group from the Netherlands. And there are groups in Estonia that control everything, and it is extremely difficult to track this. And I have colleagues who do that, and I can work with them, but I don't spend much time about this because it does require an expertise that I don't have. Many of them are semi-criminal enterprises because they are ready to break the law anytime, and they do. And the normal operation involves fishing when they are authorized, where they are authorized, and fishing in other places where not authorized, if the opportunity arises, which is half of the time. Yeah. And so, by way of control, I think we cannot control them via the financial market because they are too dark.
All right.
But I'm not sure I'm right.
Thank you. And last, Sadi, we have a couple of minutes left.
Yes, thanks. It seems that there's a clear need for international policing of the seas, right? And we don't have the regular. I mean, these boats could be controlled, stopped, and it's just because this is a zone of like no law, right?
Yeah.
There seems to be the necessity, especially if we want to save the ocean very soon, because this is just one of the aspects.
Yeah.
Tax on the ocean. We don't seem to have any kind of surveillance or protective force that's doing this. And I thought at least, with all the coast guards and international organizations trying to do something, but it seems that because it's non-national, it's a complete
Well, in principle, in exclusive economic zone, the country should be patrolling, but even that is difficult because, on one hand, Somalia has shown us through the piracy that they developed that it is very easy to cheaply control foreign boats. It's cheap. Now, Mozambique turned to France for help in patrolling its water, and France sold them a destroyer. Now, the destroyer is not it's so expensive to operate that doesn't work. So another aspect of it is that this widespread criminality, there is a book written by a former New York Times journalist called Outlaw Ocean, and it's totally scary. And I was a few days ago in New York at the premiere of a film called Fatal Watch, in which I participate, where fisheries observer So personnel that is from the countries that the companies have accepted to watch them, to watch the activities. Well, they have observers, but the observers are forbidden to report in real time because they have no cell phone, and they are forbidden to have to report in real time. They have to write reports that you can then throw away. And if they do observe too much, they get thrown overboard, and that is another aspect. In this film, we followed the fate of four. There was an American and Ghanaian and two people in the Pacific Ocean that were disappeared, that were thrown over. One of them was filmed to there's camera with it, thrown overboard. And so you have this semi-criminal enterprise running the fisheries of the world and ruining everything in the process. So that is very difficult. And
but then we have satellite control. We're able to trace.
Yeah, we know where they are. We know where they are. Indeed, this is the Global Fishing Watch, and for example, our data, the data that I showed you, they use the Global Fishing Watch to localize the fisheries that are reported on the catches that are reported on a giant scale, to localize it in EEZ of various countries. But this is totally insufficient because we cannot know that they throw people overboard, watchers. I'm sorry, the observers that they throw overboard from satellite. So I'm sorry that I'm. It's non-intellectual. It's not subtle. It's all crude stuff, and I don't yet know how best to communicate this horror in scientific terms. And maybe I should write a book like these issues, but how do you connect them with a science-based approach? That's my dilemma, but I have 4 weeks to resolve it.
All right. Yes, I'm sorry, but yeah, that is actually a good sentence to end. Thank you so much. That's the time we have for this section. Thank you for your presentation.